All right, Swally. Right, so basically what you're saying is you don't want to output the render cache. So all you've got to do is turn off this button here. So the animation option in the turbo panel inside the compositor. So if you untick this, it will only ever keep one multi-layer EXR on disk during rendering. So you're not going to end up with doubling your information if you're saving it, using file output nodes, because you can't use a multi-layer EXR in Photoshop. By the way, just while I'm on that subject, you can actually use, I'm not sure if you were aware of this, but in Photoshop there's this free plugin called, it's quite a famous one, EXR IO. And this will give Photoshop the ability to open multi-layer EXRs. But if you don't want to do that, basically, if you do want to do that rather, you can use the cache that you've created with Turbo Tools, or, as I say, you can disable the cache and then you can set it up to output. I assume you're setting up to use file output nodes to output, single EXR files from this, and you can do that obviously, and these will still be denoised even if you've got the animation option turned off. I'll just demonstrate that. So I'll choose this render layers node, and I'll go into the turbo panel. I'm just doing this for demonstration. Obviously, you're doing individual ones, but if I change this to EXR, so open EXR, not a multi-layer, and then I'll click on here, and I'll choose create on wire. This is going to create me a file output node, which is going to output open EXR images. And I'm just going to demonstrate that these will still be denoised, even if you've got this turned off. So into the turbo render options, I'll enable this, and say I want to denoise all of the passes so that I can use denoised individual passes in my third-party compositor. Then I'll just use the ultra denoise mode. That's the only occasion in actual fact where I'd use that. I'll make sure I've got the the relevant visible to camera options ticked so that these passes that need denoising get denoised. And in here I've just got these passes enabled. So if I render this now, so I'll do render, Turbo Tools render, you'll see it's going to add the Turbo Tools denoising network, which is what you're mentioning, by the way. If this doesn't get removed after you render, then all you got to do is choose, I'll show you in a second. Hang on. There we go. So if that hadn't have been removed, all you got to do is bring up the undo history and choose revert to pre-render state. It's incredibly rare. It's so rare, in fact, that the Blender developers have been unable to isolate the problem because it's just they can't replicate it. It only happens. It's only happened to me sort of 10 times in the last year. But if it does happen, Turbo Tools will give you a pop-up, and you can choose this revert to pre-render state, and it will fix it all automatically for you, including any materials that have been modified to generate that temporal stabilisation data, which incidentally you can untick here and it won't generate that data anyway, so it won't modify materials if you're not going to be using the temporal stabilizer. But in all cases, just choosing that from the undo history will revert it, and it's not going to cause you any problems. You will get a pop-up, but you can miss it, as I mentioned, if you move your mouse too quickly. Blender's a little bit too eager. It would be better, I think, if the pop-ups that Blender provides, you had to click them to get rid of them, perhaps. I don't know. But anyway, so I've rendered that out. If we look at the individual passes, it's going to, let me just make this full screen. So if we look at the individual passes on here, so we've got the combined pass is denoised, alpha's denoised, diffuse direct. So all these passes, look, have been denoised. So transparency, etc. And in the file that's been output, let's bring those in fact, let's just go to over here. You can see that has actually created an individual EXR for each one. And if we just bring these in, let's bring one of these in just for, so transmission indirect. If we look at this one, you can see it's still denoised. So we're only using 12 samples there. And again, if I just bring up let's look at the combined pass. You can see they've all been denoised. So it's identical result. So hopefully that helps you, because yeah, it's not really an issue. Again, if that problem occurs, just make sure you're rendering the compositor, because if those Turbo Tools nodes, if the problem happens, that Blender bug happens, the Turbo Tools nodes that temporarily get created during rendering won't be removed. And you'll notice that, and all you've got to do, as I say, is go in here and just choose that revert to, it's gone now, but revert to pre-render state, and it's problem solved. So yeah, I mean, personally, I wouldn't take the route that you're taking here. I would just use that IO EXR IO that I mentioned before. Hang on, bring it. So this one here is completely free, and it will just mean you can use a multi-layer EXR. It's much more convenient than outputting multiple EXR files. Excuse me. Yeah, and just leave the animation option turned on. That way you're not going to be doubling the data, because if you're doing this and you've got that turned on, like you said quite rightly, you're going to be getting the cache node for every single frame if this is enabled, and you're also going to be getting it doubled here, so you're going to get the same thing twice. So either one of those routes is fine. Personally, I would leave this turned on and just get that EXR IO add-on, or if it's not available for your whatever software you use, I'm pretty sure you can use I'm pretty sure you can use multi-layer EXR in Premiere as well. I think that's what you said you were using, or After Effects. But if not, yeah, you can just use this method. Turn that off. Do this. And I don't know if you're aware, but Turbo Tools will automatically set this up for you with one click, and that's going to output multiple EXR files for you as well. And just one other thing as well, if you go into Preferences, under Turbo Tools, you can actually reduce the render layer cache bit depth if you want that cache file to be a bit smaller in size, just providing you're not using anything like Cryptomat. So any data layers, they do require 32-bit, otherwise you'll lose information. Yeah. So there you go. Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks again. Catch you later.